Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today from wherever you are in the world. My name is Rick Wayman. I'm the CEO of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, and it's my privilege to welcome you to our 26th annual Sadako Peace Day. As you know, today marks the solemn anniversary, 75 years since the US atomic bombing of Hiroshima. Sunday, August 9th, will mark the 75th anniversary of the US atomic bombing of Nagasaki. So today, we remember the hundreds of thousands of innocent victims of these terrible attacks, as well as all innocent victims of war. After the atomic bombs devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki, people feared that nothing would grow there for 75 years. The resilience of nature is an incredible thing. In the NAPF office, we have two clippings from a tree that survived the atomic bombing in Hiroshima. You'll see them later on in the program. They're there to remind us every single day of why we do this work, to ensure that nuclear weapons are never used again, and to achieve a world in which nuclear weapons can be abolished and stay abolished. Human resilience is also a powerful force. Our keynote speaker today, Toshiharu Kano, exemplifies human resilience. Toshi's mother was 12 weeks pregnant with him on August 6, 1945, and lived a half mile from ground zero. He's overcome many obstacles throughout his life, and he has a vital voice in the movement to abolish nuclear weapons. We're deeply honored to have him with us today. Many of you are familiar with the story of Sadako Sasaki, the girl for whom our annual commemoration event is named. Sadako was just 2 years old in 1945. She survived the atomic bomb blast, fires, and radiation in the immediate aftermath of the explosion. 10 years later, she developed leukemia as a result of that radiation exposure. While in the hospital, Sadako began folding 1,000 paper cranes. A Japanese tradition says that if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, your wish will come true. Sadako's wish was for peace. So while we can't gather together in person today to fold paper cranes, we can continue to work every single day to achieve peace. One way that we're doing this is through our new practical approach called peace literacy. Through peace literacy, we give people the tools they need to identify, confront, and heal the root causes of major problems, including nuclear weapons. And we work to develop what we call our muscles of humanity: compassion, empathy, conscience, appreciation, reason, discipline, imagination, curiosity, and realistic hope. We've shown that these are real concrete capacities that can be developed with intentionality and practice through systemic education, just like we approach literacy in reading and writing. In the absence of their development, we cannot be surprised that violence, militarism, and nuclear weapons are still with us. Our first fully online peace literacy workshop is wrapping up actually in about 20 minutes. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Kano, was a part of that workshop, along with dozens of other educators and community leaders. Our next workshop starts this Sunday and is sold out with participants from around the United States and other countries. In addition to these in-depth workshops where people acquire and practice the skills they need to solve the world's most dangerous technological, social, and psychological issues, we're also working in the educational system, from preschool to university level, as well as adult education. I encourage you to learn more about this exciting new paradigm that we call peace literacy at peaceliteracy.org. We have a wonderful group of speakers, poets, and musicians here today. Bob Sedivy is a Komuso monk who plays the Japanese 5-holed bamboo flute called the shakuhachi. Toshiharu Kano, our keynote speaker, is a hibakusha from Hiroshima who now lives in Salt Lake City. Sojourner Kincaid Rolle is a poet, playwright, and mediator. David Krieger is the co-founder and president emeritus of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. Hal Maynard is a singer-songwriter, and Sandy Jones is NAPF's Director of Communications. Perie Longo is a poet, a marriage and family therapist, and a member of NAPF's Board of Directors. Sarah Witmer is NAPF's Director of Development and Partnerships. We're all delighted that you're here with us today for this important commemoration event. We're going to do our best to present this event without any technical hiccups, but as with most people these days, we're navigating new technologies. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Bob Sedivy, who will play a piece on the shakuhachi.
Thank you, Rick. I'm going to play this shakuhachi. The shakuhachi, it means bamboo flute, and this one has the root end. And I am a Kabuso monk, also known as a priest of nothingness or priest of emptiness. So I'm going to play an ancient song called Sanya to open the program, and at the end, I'll close with another piece. And now it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Toshiharu Kano.
I am really honored to participate in the 26th annual Sadako Peace Day. Today, I look like anybody else walking in downtown Salt Lake City. Nobody would ever imagine I was 12 weeks along inside of my mother's womb when the first atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 75 years ago, 8:15 a.m., August 6, 1945. I look healthy. I have no cut marks or burns on my face or on my arms. When I told my future wife, Rita, that we were 800 meters, less than a half a mile from the hypocenter, she could not believe what she was hearing. She checked me out on Google and found out our interview in 1965 with a Salt Lake Tribune reporter on the front page of the local news section. I was born March 1st, 1946, 6 months after the bombing. I weighed just under 5 pounds. Radiation absorbed by my tiny body destroyed my ability to fight common diseases. The common cold turned into bronchitis and into pneumonia. This happened almost every month. I remember my mother holding me on her lap and keeping my mouth and nose toward the steam vaporizer throughout many nights so I could breathe. She also wrapped a steaming hot towel around my chest to keep the airway open. She changed the towel every 2 hours. I had mumps 7 times. I lost 20% of my left lung with tuberculosis. I had kidney failure and I passed kidney stones when I was 6 years old. I also had rheumatic fever and my 10 fingers were covered with ugly warts. I was ashamed to show my hands to my classmates because of frequent absentees from school. I fell so far behind in my schoolwork, I lost interest in catching up with the rest of my classmates. When we moved to Salt Lake City in 1961, I was 15 years old. I graduated from junior high school in Japan, but Granite School District put me back in junior high school again because of my English skill was not quite proficient enough to enroll into high school. I did not miss any school days that year, and during the high school years, my attendance was perfect. I was fortunate to marry a girl from North Dakota who was studying at the University of Utah to get her Master of Science in Educational Psychology. We got married in December 1968. We were afraid to have children because I felt that radiation may have damaged me and prevent us from having a healthy child. We decided to take a chance and we were successful in having a beautiful baby boy. Today he is 6'2", 2 inches tall and weighs 210 pounds. I often think about more than 400,000 women, men, and children who died or were injured in Hiroshima and Nagasaki 75 years ago. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima was equal to 15,000 tons of TNT. Today, we have hydrogen bombs equal to 100 million tons of TNT. This is equal to 7 Great Pizza Pyramid in Egypt combined. These bombs possess absolutely unthinkable power and destruction. Today, among 9 nuclear weapon nations, we have over 15,000 nuclear bombs. As a hibakusha, getting involved with the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation was a dream come true. For the first time, I met an organization that had the same goals and missions to abolish the nuclear weapons from our earth and never repeat the tragedies of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Participating in Sadako Peace Days strengthened my mission for the future. I am more determined to go full speed ahead to achieve peace and harmony to our earth and our future. Now I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Sojourner.
Mute. Good afternoon. My name is Sojourner Kincaid Rolle, and I'm a poet in Santa Barbara, as well as an active member of the Peace community of the world. I've been involved with the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation for many, many years that I've been in Santa Barbara, probably 30 years. My great friend who introduced me to the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation was Frank Kelly, who was working in the US government at the time that the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki under President Truman at the time. Following his work there, Frank worked to the end of his life on behalf of peace and really believed the United States should have a peace institute dedicated to the cause of peace. I have always been a part of Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, and I was actually remember being at the dedication of the Sadako Peace Garden, and I have been there many years at many ceremonies, and I'm honored to be here today. I'm honored to be here on this day of remembrance, on this day that we honor the memory of one little girl, Sadako, who even during the years that she suffered the excruciating pain of leukemia caused by radiation sickness, kept hope alive. Sadako had hope that with all the strength that she could gather, folding 1,000 intricate paper cranes, she would be healed and live. Her wish was to live in peace. Her hope has been kept alive by the thousands and thousands of paper cranes that have been folded and continued to be folded in her name. I also stand here today to honor the memory of Martin Luther King Jr., whose words form a lasting belief that hope lives on, even in despair. I am honored to stand in remembrance of John Lewis and all those who lived through despair and struggled with the hope that one day we would all be free. I am honored to stand here to remember our long struggling forebears who struggled through generations of bondage, who struggled through long years of immoral abuse, who dreamed of freedom and prayed for the survival of their children, keeping hope alive. I stand here today to salute the children of children who bear the passed down sorrows of centuries of war. I stand here today as part of the great multitudes continuing to sing, "We shall overcome." I stand with those who imagine a different world, who dream of a time when we realize the truth of our oneness. Deep in our hearts where belief resides, there is an unquenchable flame, a never-dying ember, an everlasting candle, a light greater than the dark, a light that leads toward our dream, a light that illumines our love. I stand to keep hope alive. And now I'd like to introduce David Krieger, a poet as well as a peacemaker.
Thank you, Sojourner. Since 26 years that we've been celebrating or commemorating Sadako Peace Day has gone by quickly, and now we're at the 75th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is a solemn occasion for which we remember all innocent victims of war, and particularly of the atomic bombings. I want to read two poems. The first one is called A Short History Lesson, 1945. It is about an irony in history. August 6th, dropped atomic bomb on civilians at Hiroshima. August 8th, agreed to hold war crimes trials for Nazis. August 9th, dropped atomic bomb on civilians at Nagasaki. The second poem I want to read is called 8 A-Bomb Haiku. A haiku is a Japanese poetic form. It generally has 3 lines and 17 syllables, but not always these days. So this poem, 8-A-bomb haiku. The desert glowed brighter than 1,000 suns. Everything changed. Japan was clearly defeated. Still, the A-bombs found their targets. The A-bombs killed and maimed massively, mostly civilians. Hiroshima, city of 1,000 cranes, calls out for peace. Nagasaki, may you be the last victim of an A-bomb attack. For every hibakusha, many must obey. Many must remain silent. Those first A-bombs, small by today's measure of insanity. The mournful sounds of the shakuhachi take one's breath away. The mournful sounds of the shakuhachi take one's breath away. Now I'd like to introduce Hal Maynard and Sandy Jones, who will provide some music.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hal Maynard. This is Sandy Jones, playing bass tonight. We're going to start with the first paragraph from a recent article written by Elaine Scarry, which pretty much sums up the songs we're going to play.
Elaine is a Harvard professor, and she's an advisor to the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. Elaine gave the last year's Kelly Lecture on Humanity's Future, and she writes this. This past Memorial Day, a Minneapolis police officer knelt on the throat of an African American, George Floyd, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. 75 years ago, an American pilot dropped an atomic bomb on the civilian population of Hiroshima. Worlds apart in time, space, and scale, the two events share 3 key features. Each was an act of state violence. Each was an act carried out against a defenseless opponent. Each was an act of naked racism.
Our 2 songs tonight are about those 2 events, both of which changed the world. This is called 8:46. It's about the last 8 minutes and 46 seconds of George Floyd's life. Take your knee off my neck. Take your knee off my neck. One voice gonna change the world. Take your knee off my neck. Can't breathe, I can't breathe. Can't breathe, I can't breathe. One voice gonna change the world. Can't breathe, I can't. Mama, mama, I'm done. Mama, mama, I am done. One voice gonna change the world. Mama, mama, I am done. Take your knee on my neck. One voice gonna change the world. Take your knee off my neck. Take your knee off my neck.
If it's really true that a little part of God lives in each one of us, then on August 6th, 1945, that part of each of us was missing.
This is called 8645. And then we're going to end the song with a verse of Amazing Grace, which is about the forgiveness we still seek after 75 years. God was sleeping when that school bell rung. God was sleeping when that school bell rung. Didn't see no airplane. Didn't see no bomb. God was nowhere when the sun stopped shining. God was nowhere when the sun stopped shining. Didn't hear no prayer, didn't hear no crying. God was long gone, left us on our own. God was long gone, left us on our own. Left us aching. Where did we go wrong? God was sleeping when that school bell rung. God was sleeping When that school bell rung, didn't see no airplane, didn't see no bomb. God was long gone when that school bell.
Thank you. And now it's our great pleasure to introduce another amazing poet, Perie Longo.
Thank you, Sandy and Hal, so much for your music. I always love hearing it. And good evening, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote some years ago, an experience I had visiting Kuwait. And I'm sitting here thinking, why would I choose to write a poem about Kuwait? And as we all sit here shoulder to shoulder across the United States, maybe across the world, our world is closer than ever, just a screen away. And so I was thinking that I was asked to come to Kuwait. I think it was about 2005 when a woman who taught literature at the University of Kuwait discovered an article I wrote that was online talking about poetry as a way to peace. And she was very interested in that subject. And so I went to Kuwait. And this poem is a result of that visit. It begins with an epigram by Thich Nhat Hanh, "Humans are not our enemies." Out of the silence of writing, she flies to the front of the lecture hall like a raven, black swirled around her head, draped over body, a veil fastened from mouth to ear. Her eyes mirror and shadow, beauty and anguish at once. In her hand, a small scrap of paper like a sail. Her words a wind that propels her. She wants to read her poem, released when I spoke of how poetry can be a road to peace. How Rumi wrote to greet every feeling as a guest to the house of the heart. The veil that covers her mouth puffs in and out. With each breath, a tent opening in the desert between us. And she speaks about being hidden, not heard, how she aches with loss, relatives felled for war's intolerable gain. When I ask, what can I do? She tears the veil from her mouth. Say more, she says, I have such thirst. East and west, moving one direction, sand becomes water. We drink and drink. And now it is my pleasure and delight to introduce to you Sarah Witmer.
Thank you, Perie. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I work at NAPF as the Director of Development and Partnerships. Thank you for being here today. Quick note, I'm sitting in our CEO Rick's office. He mentioned the trees earlier. He kindly offered for me to use his office today, and I'm flanked here by those two trees that he mentioned. These are camellias that were grown from seeds of a tree that survived the bombing in Hiroshima. Named Heart and Soul, my coworker Carol takes very good care of them. So, we're living in the midst of a pandemic. Maybe you heard something about that. I'm kidding, it's inescapable, isn't it? It's in the very air we breathe. I've learned in this time that my own breath could be a weapon. When considering going to visit my grandmother and my parents, or wanting to hug my sister, or walking past somebody in a parking lot when I don't have my mask on, I've learned that I could accidentally hurt those I love the very most, and even those I don't know at all, by the involuntary, necessary act of breathing. I could do that in non-pandemic times too, but that never felt as real or as urgent as it does now. My colleague, Paul K. Chappelle, says that this pandemic is pulling back the rug in our society and revealing problems that we've swept under the rug for years, hoping nobody would notice that the carpet is getting harder and harder to walk on with all of these bumps. Problems of injustice, inequality, and ignorance have existed as long as we have, most definitely. Hibakusha and nuclear testing victims have carried the burden of injustice for 75 years, while others have had the option to look the other way. But it can't keep going this way. We're just going to keep tripping over what we've swept under the rug with more war and more needless pain. I read a fantastic article this week in The Guardian called Daughters of the Bomb by Professor Erika Hayasaki at UC Irvine. In her article, she talks about a Japanese saying, which we also have in English. In Japanese, it's kuki o yomu. It literally means read the air. In English, we say read the room. What is the air telling us? One thing it's telling me is that we Homo sapiens are vulnerable and at the same time, very powerful, even in our breath. So we have this strange paradox in us, don't we? This great vulnerability and also this great power. The paradox can cause extreme conflict. Professor Hayasaki says, I know that a single soul can hold within it two opposing sides of the same war. I know too that at some point one side always wins. To avoid vulnerability and to assert power, men in suits dropped bombs on little children in 1945. That wasn't the first time, and it wasn't the last. To avoid vulnerability and to assert power, people make up rules about who should have power and who should not, based on the color of your skin, your gender, who you love, where you were born. To avoid vulnerability and to assert power, some people are refusing to acknowledge that there's a contagious pandemic at all, refusing to wear masks in public, continuing to hold parties, even intentionally coughing on people. To avoid vulnerability and to assert power, some have found ways to take away even oxygen. 75 years ago, the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki sucked the oxygen out of the air in a 1-mile radius, causing hundreds to suffocate. The remaining air filled with fire and smoke as thousands of people stumbled down to the Ota River in Hiroshima to find water to dull the pain in their burning lungs. On May 25th of this year, George Floyd was taped on camera gasping as a police officer knelt on his neck. He said, as many Black men have said before him, I can't breathe. This is not just a problem on a global scale, it happens in our daily lives too. Our society has a problem with fully understanding power and vulnerability. The suggestion that they are opposing forces pressures us to silence empathy and humility and to heighten our defenses. Our society suggests that power is a protection against being hurt, attacked, or taken advantage of. But power that allows some to be heard and others to be ignored, that allows a select few to prosper, that looks the other way while others struggle to succeed, is not real power. My colleague Paul, who created the peace literacy movement, suggests that real power looks very different. Paul says, when we change our minds about a subject after considering new information, our society tends to view this as a weakness, as being wrong and losing, but it's really a sign of strength, of growing and gaining. Brené Brown, whose TED Talk called The Power of Vulnerability has 49 million views, says that vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. Vulnerability does not mean we're weak. It is not something to hide or to sweep under the rug. It's part of being fully human. It offers us the chance to try things differently. It challenges us to respond with humility and with wisdom rather than with arrogance and force. There must be another way. In a country where freedom of speech and expression is a guaranteed right, but freedom of oxygen is not, who will speak for those whose breath was abruptly cut off? What can we do with the breath that we still have to make the world more just and more peaceful, and to honor those who continue to die because the world lacks justice and peace? Martin Luther King Jr., whose voice was also abruptly silenced, understood that a world with nuclear weapons is a world where true freedom and equality will never exist. Professor Hayasaki quotes him as saying, "We must transform the dynamics of the world power struggle from the negative nuclear arms race, which no one can win, to a positive contest to harness man's creative genius for the purpose of making peace." Focus on the breath in your lungs right now. This breath means you have the power to transform the world around you. It challenges you to also make room for your own vulnerability to speak. In honor of the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in honor of Sadako, in honor of Toshiharu and other hibakusha who have used their pain to teach others and to tell the truth, in honor of human beings who were told that their lives did not matter, let's make our breath count. Thank you. And now Bob Sedivy will come back to close our evening.
Thank you, Sarah. And it's my honor now to end the program with a 13th century requiem piece called Temuke. This came down orally through the temples from one teacher to their other students through the monks and comes to us today. It's a very sad and melancholy song. And when Gandhi heard this, he said, "Now I know what the voice of the dead sounds like." So I'm going to dedicate this piece to those who lost their lives during the bombing 75 years ago, and also to the hibakusha, some who died shortly thereafter. It's said that the living will envy the dead. But today I'm going to ask us to do this as a piece all together. And Temuke literally means hands folded in prayer. So wherever you're at, I encourage you to put your hands together in prayer as we dedicate this piece for the peace of the world. Because when we find peace within our heart, we can bring that peace to our families, to our communities, and to the whole world. Temuke.